All right, folks, welcome to Nino's Corner.tv. I got one of your favorites. I got Kerry Cassidy joining me. We're going to go pretty deep and dark into this. Kerry, thank you for joining me once again. It's always an honor.
Thanks.
You've had one of my favorite, seriously, I got to bring this up, most of the time, but you've always had one of my favorite channels, Project Camelot. It's been like epic channel. It's been an OG channel for a really long time. I mean, how long? Like a decade or longer?
18 years.
That's crazy. So. I mean, you were like one of the first real pioneers to bring people into this scene, the awakening scene. So I got to give you all the credit in the world for that. I used to watch your channel. You've done amazing work. So everyone appreciates it.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Nino. Actually, we were not the first because there were people like Phil Schneider, and others, but basically we were on video. That's when video came of age. And so we jumped on that pretty much before almost anyone and started touring, actually going in person, touring the world, interviewing whistleblowers.
Yeah, I watched, I saw it from
that was back in the day.
Yeah, when you first started, I was watching you, man. I give you a lot of credit for what you've done. It was amazing. You helped wake me up in a lot of ways. So thank you for that. Let's jump to what's happening now with the deep state war. Obviously, I've had Juan on many times. I've had the Ghost on. I've had talked to Caviezel. I've had a lot of guests on. Everyone gives me bits and pieces of the puzzle that I can fit together. I think you're really advanced in a lot of ways with the war on AI, the spiritual war that's happening right now, the war on humanity. So let's dive a little deeper into that. Let's get into that with you, because we can go that direction with you. What do you see happening in your perspective right now? Where are we right now in this war?
Okay, well, first of all, let me say that I see a lot of people out there sort of very doom and gloom. And I know that there's maybe some dark things going to come down, but I think that there's too much emphasis on that right now. I just want to say that at least according to my dreams of the future, and even if you add up what's really going on behind the scenes, I think we have a lot better situation going on here on Earth than people give us credit for. And I do want to say that Sound of Freedom, I think, is doing very well. It came out over this holiday, right? So wanted to maybe touch on that and just say that, I did write an article early on for people to get an idea that where this movie stands, which it's not going too deep into the subject. It's really for people who
basic surface level.
Yeah. Who don't acknowledge what we consider to be the deep state, the Illuminati, et cetera. And over this 4th of July, I actually had a conversation and I realized, because I'm in Northern California right now, and I realized that, you know what? Most of the people around me, I didn't realize this before, are vaxxed. I don't know what the mentality is or where they don't listen to people like us. No. They don't even acknowledge there's an Illuminati. I mean, it's actually mind-boggling.
I have a friend right now and a lot of them are in denial. A lot of them are saying, I never said I was vaxxed. I wasn't vaxxed. I was like, I remember you telling me you were vaxxed. You said and he's breaking out with shingles all over his face. And then guess what he tells me, Kerry? Well, I went and got I went ahead and now I just went and got the shingles vaccine too. I'm like,
I know.
There's no helping them. There's no helping them.
I went to a neighborhood. I live in this sort of neighborhood, so not everyone was actually living in that area. They were from other places in Northern California, came to this event, and just sat across from people, and they just have no clue. They don't. It's not a topic of conversation. They don't. And if you bring it up, they've got no clue whatsoever. They
don't put two and two together at all. And
they just don't.
I had a waitress, Kerry, that was waiting on our table. She just told us how she lost her mom. I'm like, she was just one day to the next, she lost her mom. And I was like, let me ask you, was she vaccinated? Yeah, she took all 3. I mean, that should have helped her. I'm like, excuse me? Yeah. Well, we were hoping that would help her, but she died anyway from COVID. I'm like, no, you're missing it. You're not putting it together, are you? They don't put it together.
No, not at all. Not even close. And
We can't
that,
help them, Kerry.
I know, but this is the thing that occurs to me. They're not going to like wake up because they don't know they're asleep. You know what I mean? When you don't know you're asleep and you believe you're awake. See, that's the thing. They're very egotistical. They're very self-centered. They very much think that their reality is the reality. So if you think your reality is the reality for everyone, that's where you kind of fall off the cliff. And we're talking about educated, well-to-do, relatively well-to-do people, not a clue. And it just boggles the mind.
But the way I see it, Kerry, is that you could be well educated, you could be all knowing, you could be very intelligent within the system, within the box of control. Yes. We're operating out here. We're not in this circle. So we're out here and we're looking at them through out here. And I'm sorry, I call it collateral damage. I think it's just, we have to accept it now. I've accepted it a long time ago. I accepted it about a year ago that we're not going to save everybody. We're not going to wake everybody up. It's just the way it is. It's their soul journey. We respect it, and I stand away from it now.
Well, I agree. But every once in a while, I don't have conversations like that very often because I don't go out into this, what you call the general public, necessarily having conversations like you would do on a 4th of July type of weekend with either family or people related to families and that sort of thing, little kids with their parents, that whole world. And so when you do come across them, I think it's a good reminder for us to realize that this engine, if you will, of change, we're in it, we're on it, we're part of it, okay? They will realize the change after it happens, not before, okay? So we're seeing it coming. We've been on it all this time. We're even like tired of waiting for it, right? But they're going to wait until it's right on top of them, and then maybe they'll see it, but maybe not. Maybe Trump will go back in office and they'll think that's a very bad thing.
I think that's what we should expect.
They won't realize all their rights and everything that Biden was doing to them. I mean, whatever, so
are you familiar? You're familiar with Daniel Brinkley, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so he's come on my show many times and says there's a shift that's going to be happening in 2025.
Oh, really?
I guess like a solar flash or something that's going to be happening that's going to shift humanity. I'm not sure. I may be butchering it, but what's your thoughts on that? Do you think we're going to hit a point where we kind of like we're coexisting for a while and then there's going to be some kind of sudden break in humanity where one goes one direction, the other goes the other direction? I mean, a massive die-off maybe physically from what we can see in the three-dimensional world, but maybe we see it in a different way. I mean, what do you see happening?
Well, I've talked about what Richard Allen Miller told me about, but he thinks it's a year before 25. So he thinks
24. I
know there's a group that thinks 25. There's another group of people, maybe even smaller, that think there's going to be something end of March, beginning of April 2024. So the jury's still out, of course, on all of that. I did recently talk to another source, and he's actually saying the Corps never stopped. That was a lie. The government lied to Richard Allen Miller. Now, this is a physicist who works for Navy Intel. So I'm thinking, okay, what we have here is either my source is out and out lying to me, right? Which is not impossible, or what we're talking about are the two governments going on, and that source and his contacts, for whatever reason, are choosing to go along with what we call the Biden show, right? And so that's two governments. I was just looking this morning at the David Strait statement that was made publicly, and I sent you the video. And that was several 4th of July's, a few years ago, like I think even 2017, 18, whatever it was.
I haven't looked at it yet.
Oh, you haven't? Well, you must have seen it. But it's David Strait basically showing some footage of Mount Rushmore with not just
someone dancing on top of it.
Yeah, it's John F. Kennedy Jr. and Trump. And this was during the time. Well,
I remember that now.
A Q reveal, right? And David Strait is saying he's a lawyer who's also special forces who worked for Trump. Okay, so people want to get a focus on who he is. You can look him up. So just saying that he was saying John F. Kennedy Jr. is our VP. Okay, even back then. Okay, which is, you know, a lot of people don't know that. Okay, they don't understand that Trump dissolved the United States corporation while he was in office. He signed an executive order that dissolved the United States corporation and basically brought back into effect what we call the republic, which is our original republic under the Constitution.
But Biden has to do his job in destroying the rest of the corporation, at least specifically for the.
Well, it's a show, as right. You know, we would say, but there's a lot more to it because, you know, even over the weekend, they're showing Hunter and crew, and of course, even Juana said there's 4 Bidens, okay, and none of them, by the way, are the real Biden. He's dead. So
I think there's 3 of them now. I think one of them passed, is what Juana's telling me. There's 3 of them now, I think.
Whatever. Okay, I'm just telling you. A few months ago, the guy, whoever was still alive, was Juana said 4. Okay, so it doesn't matter whether there's 3, 4, 6, 8, you know, however many. But the bottom line is that this is a show, and that no one out there that I'm talking about, these people that you meet at a party or whatever and stumble on. And then I was also seeing that the vax is reemerging in certain pockets, and it's coming out, I think, stimulated by 5G. We recently had a video where there's a military guy who is actually saying that the military knows that 5G activates the vax, the COVID, the so-called COVID, but it's the vax. It's a reaction to 5G or other electronics. It's like, actually, by the way, high altitude sickness, if you've ever had that.
Yeah, I have.
It's actually that same thing. So those are the symptoms. And that's just how our body reacts to poisons, to being in an environment where we're not healthy. We're getting bombarded by electronics.
Do you think we're in the middle of the mass die-off right now, or do you think it's coming? Do you think the real mass die-off is coming?
It's still coming. I think we're having people die for sure. Yeah. In fact, just somebody, I think, Robert De Niro's, was it his stepdaughter's son? Did you hear about that? Died.
No, I didn't know.
Well, it's an interesting story because it just happened like a few days ago, and what they put out was there was a white substance, powdery substance next to him. He was sitting in a chair in a high level loft type place. Okay, very wealthy. And what they said, they didn't say it was cocaine or whatever. They just said white substance, which is really weird to do that, right? But the other thing is that I think that was staged. I think he probably died from the vax.
Yeah, they're covering
the last thing they're going to admit is that child, who was a young man really, died of the vax. I think there's a lot of cover up. You see what I'm saying?
Well, look what's happening with Jamie Foxx. Nobody can get a real story out of it. It's like, he's in the hospital, he's out of the hospital, he's back in the hospital, like he's getting a blood transfusion, they're clearing out his blood. I mean, I'm hearing all kinds of different stories with this guy, but I do know that he's sick from people that know of him. And
okay, but he's back. I'm sure he's vaxxed.
Exactly.
So what I'm trying to say here is that you hear these people, and even I have friends who have had what you call kind of like a rematch with something that basically sounds like the vax or the so-called, whatever. And that has to be thrown out at people right now using frequency weapons. See, because we have a government and a secret government that is using secret frequency weapons on the public, and they never know it. They don't realize this. The reason besides whistleblower testimony, I've actually experienced this because I've been, I don't know if they're still doing it as much because I don't go to conferences as much, but what they do is they actually send those frequency weapons at conferences where people are in alternative situations, right? They're talking about alternative
like
stuff.
MUFON and stuff like that.
Big events,
Wow.
contact in the
Well, they're targeted. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So what happens is I used to go to those conferences, not that one, but I used to go to the ones in Vegas and next door in the Flamingo, whatever that city's called. And I'm telling you that while I was at the conference, I would get sick. Then I would get in my car. I had one really clear incident happen where I was absolutely deathly ill, throwing up, all kinds of stuff, right? I finally said, okay, I have to leave. So I got my stuff together. I drove outside. There was a ring road around the building, the Flamingo, as it happens. And I drove right outside the ring road, like just started leaving it. And I started to feel better. And by the time I was, let's say, a mile away, I was fine.
You know what? That's funny you
kidding.
say that. Yeah, I was in Vegas. I was just in Vegas for 4 days in the Strip area, and I felt bogged down. I felt heavy. I was getting headaches. My vision was a little blurry. I was like, man, this has to be the 5G because it is so heavily concentrated in that area right there in the Strip. I had to. We left after 4 days. I was like, I'm never going back, man. I'm not going back to Vegas ever again. It was so intense.
Wow. Well, see, I know that people are saying 5G right now, but I'm not so sure that's actually what's rolling out. I think we need people to actually have the equipment to test to see what is being rolled out. Is it 5G? Is it 6G, 7G, 8G, 9G? And is it anything? Because according to at least, and this gets into what government do we really have? What is Trump doing? What is the sort of deep state government, and what are they doing, and what is Trump doing to counter some of this stuff? Because you can appreciate that. Look, I don't think Trump and his family or any of these people that we consider to be patriots are going to sit there, especially the military, and allow something to be rolled out that's going to damage the health and well-being of their friends and family. Okay, so what we had heard early on was that Trump and the Q group, were actually stopping the 5G rollout. They had actually stopped it. Now, we've never gotten, I don't know why this is, and I even asked some guys that I know how to test this kind of thing to go test, but they didn't do it. They just ignored me. I don't know, maybe they're afraid. I don't know what happens. But the idea is that the rollout of the wall was actually more than just a wall. It mitigates frequency, and it was supposed to be reversing the 5G frequency. That was
wasn't that the whole theory behind Covey or whatever he said, Covey. Remember what Trump would always say that word, Covey or Covey, whatever the hell was, and that was like some kind of element on the chart that he put on he put in the towers to nullify or neutralize the 5G. So
look, so what I'm saying is people are jumping to a conclusion and saying it's 5G, okay? But my understanding is even when they said they rolled out 5G, they didn't, okay? And that there's something else going on, and it probably is frequency weapons, and it probably is targeted. That's the most logical explanation in my world, because again, you got to remember, they're not going to kill their own, okay? This group, the Q group, is not that stupid, okay? They're not just going to sit around and go, oh, nice, 5G. No, they're just not. So there are some things they're taking care of, but they're not communicating with us about. Now, I'm not real happy about that, okay, which I've made more than clear in a number of, interviews and so on. But they're rolling out this program, this, waking up program that they think they're doing, in their way. Okay, I don't necessarily agree with certain things, right? So I also wanted to bring people's attention to this video that Louis Herms, Louis Herms is the leader of the Truth Tour. So he made a video called Cages that has come out right at the same time as this Sound of Freedom, right? And there's something weird going on because we have a story where people need to wake up, and it goes so deep. And in Lewis's Cages documentary, which is covering kind of a lot of ground that is not talked about because it's a documentary. It can get away with talking about certain things, right? Having people, actual witnesses talk about what's happening with kids. The one thing that I thought his documentary brought out is it's institutionalized. And this is a very important point because it's one thing that they're corralling children, they're picking them up at the border. There's a whole human trafficking element going worldwide, but there's an institutionalized portion that has to do with all these organizations. I mean, this goes back to Hillary and the island where
Epstein.
What?
Epstein Island?
No, the island. I'm sorry, it's early in the morning. But anyway, okay. Just to say, everyone knows the island we're talking about, that Haiti, I guess it was.
Okay, yeah.
Anyway, so what we're talking about is children that are getting picked up from one place, shipped to another, put in what we would say orphanages, or child protective custody, or taken away from their parents under these false pretenses. Those are also kids going into this whole pedophilia realm. All right. And this one woman in the Cages documentary, again, is explaining how it's almost impossible for the parent to get their child back once they go into one of these programs. And so people are, supposedly coming to help. They look like they're helping. And this gets back to the Queen of England and what she did in Canada with children. And I mean, this is a highway, okay? This is, I call it the adrenochrome highway. But the bottom line is that that includes the pedophilia. It includes, sorry.
Okay.
Okay, so.
And Jim does a good job of that too. Jim actually talks about adrenochrome any chance that he's got. Jim will come out in interviews and just knock it out of the park with adrenochrome. He talks about adrenochrome all the time.
About Caviezel?
Yeah, Jim Caviezel talks about adrenochrome. That's why he gets eaten alive by the media, the liberal media.
Okay, and there were rumors also that Mel Gibson has a similar type film that's coming out.
Yeah, I can't comment on that. But the
idea here is that there were also rumors over the weekend that he got arrested. I think maybe that was an old story that started making the rounds again. That had nothing to do.
I haven't heard anything about that. I'll ask Jim.
Okay,
I haven't heard anything. Because
I'm constantly kind of like taking a look at what's out there, all right, and on Telegram and wherever, and sometimes you just don't know the source of what's coming out.
Correct, I know.
So what I'm trying to say here is it's very important to realize that our institutions have been made to serve the state. And what do they want to do? They actually want to take your children away. And this has been a progressive sort of story that most people don't realize. Okay, you look at the laws that they're trying to pass right now in the Senate and in the House, which will take away the control that a parent has over a child's life, right? And we're talking, these are bills that are actually coming forward. And from what I understand, one just passed the House. I think it has to go to the Senate next.
Pass the House?
This is the information I have. I don't have it right in front of me to show you, but basically this is the idea. The idea being that if a parent disagrees with what a child is envisioning for themselves, even at the age of 3 years old, that they actually could be arrested and stopped, and that the child's whatever opinion of their life, and we have children getting sex changes and all kind of crazy stuff because they're being influenced also by their peer pressure.
At school, teachers are doing subvertly. They're manipulating the children,
and teachers are also suffering being attacked if they say one thing wrong. And this whole pronoun thing, I mean, there's some bill that's out there saying, that a person like me or you could be arrested if we don't use the right pronoun or something.
Disgusting. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It's like society has gone completely mad. All right. And yet I just want to say that in terms of a more spiritual outlook, your reality is still your reality. It intersects with the larger reality, but it's not sort of, because a certain, I'm a journalist, I'm not going to name him, put out this thing about sort of a doom and gloom and that we're going to have a nuclear war or whatever. Again, it's important to realize that these things are localized mainly. And even though they have roots that go deep into the deep state, that they go into what's happening on this planet, it's important to understand that, look, you and I woke up this morning. I think, I don't know, you're close to the border, so maybe your situation is a little worse, but still, it's like a beautiful morning, right? Sun is shining, blah, blah, blah. So I'm just saying that people are internalizing a picture of the world and of life that's coming from the mainstream media that is constantly bombarding, and now also what I would say the alternative media that's doing the same thing. There's a tendency for some reason for media to want to see the very darkest side of everything, okay? But it doesn't have to be looked at like that. Like I had somebody writing to me kind of in a panic over wanting to travel somewhere and thinking that, there were going to be a terrorist incident wherever they went on the planet. and I'm saying to them, because I travel all over the place, right? It's kind of like you carry your reality in your head and you can attract some of this stuff if you don't really see maybe clearly. And because you're looking for something dark to happen, it will happen, right?
Yeah, I agree with that.
So I think I'm not saying
you bring about what you think about, basically.
I'm not saying that things aren't bad, but I've also remember seeing a recent video not long ago that was actually saying the real statistics of the number of people like that are dying of starvation, or now given that these things could be lies and manipulated, but on the other hand, they've been saying these statistics forever. So what we could look at is actually, are statistics even right? Or is it how you look at them? Because you can screw around with numbers and make something look completely different than it really is. I'm just saying that there's a different way to look at reality. And some of this stuff, Cuban Missile Crisis with the Chinese and Cuba, that Juan's talking about.
Yeah.
This situation, just saying this, and, you can toss it out if you like, but Captain Mark Richards, who's been in prison for over, I think it's probably over 40 years by now, because the deep state realized that he was their enemy and he was going to be, in essence, a whistleblower, which is what he became, because I interviewed him now 12 times. I haven't seen him in a couple of years because they locked down the prisons when COVID happened, and then they wouldn't let people visit. I think they've changed that recently, but I haven't had, been able to go down there. So basically, the bottom line is he said the Cuban Missile Crisis wasn't what it appeared to be at all. I know this sounds insane because everyone goes, well, I was putting missiles in Cuba, right? And that we were putting missiles over by Russia back in those days again. And it's kind of like revisiting the same, it's kind of like Groundhog Day, right? Would come around again. So, but the bottom line is that this is not, he said it was actually a gray ET intervention of some kind. That missile crisis, what we called the missile crisis, what we believed was the missile crisis, was not that at all.
What was
that
it?
Gets into what Nixon really knew. Well, this is the thing. I couldn't get Mark to tell me more, like details, right? And I think it's because, obviously he's allowed to tell me a certain amount, but he's not allowed to tell me like the real nitty gritty. So it's very, if he says that, you can either ignore it, you can take it on board and try to find your own evidence of something, or or you can just toss it out or whatever it is. So all I'm saying is that these things, even like the entire Ukrainian war, okay, and what they're saying, Putin's going to do this and Putin's going to do that, and like there's this the Wagner group that went in
tried to overthrow Putin,
depose Putin and so on, that he actually organized that. that he has put them in place in Belarus and so on. So understanding that there are so many different explanations.
There's a deeper, darker story behind all of this.
And yes, and
you're saying it has more to do with extraterrestrial, the Greys,
some
the
of
AI
it, yes.
war.
Some of it definitely has to do with extraterrestrials. And the strange thing being,
I don't doubt that when you peel the onion, there's more and more layers to go, more and more layers to go. So there's,
I'm sure you know, come on, of course you know this by now, right?
I
You're
do.
not dumb.
I do 100%.
You're talking to people.
But I mean, it's like the audience.
But for people,
they don't know it.
We're out here to relay what we come across.
But look at, hold on for a second. But people are just waking up to the sound of freedom. I mean, they're just barely grasping that this is even happening, that this is even a problem or a pandemic. This is the real pandemic. Like, people don't even know what this is. They're going to see this movie, and there's people who are just like, I never knew this existed. Like, seriously.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. 100%.
So what you're talking about right now is for an audience that's much deeper down the rabbit hole.
I know, but it does matter because they're being lied to. So you're being lied to not just from the mainstream, but you're being lied to also from the alternative. And even,
I agree with that.
I mean, I'm sad to say this, but even to some degree from the Q situation.
But you got to
they want to focus you like this in a sort of tunnel vision towards voting and things like that, right? These sort of practical areas, but they don't want to bring in the big picture because in their world, they think it dilutes your understanding. But again, they're actually having a,
here's what it does. Here's what it does. You lose people. You lose people. Like what we're talking about right here. It's cognitive dissonance. They put their head in the sand. They go, this is too much. This is too crazy. There's no proof. They don't know what they're talking. I'm just going to turn this off and just focus on what I can do.
Yeah, but that's not an excuse. Selling people short. This is a problem across the board. And that includes with militaries everywhere.
So what's the real problem?
Well, let me just say this, because humans, I've said this many times, and I'm going to say it again, that, okay, so there's all these people out there that are going to say, God this, God that, God wins, blah, 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 right? But what they don't realize is that if you truly believed that God made you and made your body, right, and who you are, and your soul goes back to God, and so at the same time, you're looking at all these other things going, they have power over you, and consequently that you're powerless when you're supposed to be made by God. Do you see there's a contradiction there? If we're so, wonderful, made by God, then God is not stupid. God knew about AI before we did. God knew about, any challenge that we are going to face. It was already in the God consciousness, okay? And therefore, what did they do? They created us in a way that we would be able to combat these things that would kill us, okay? And I mean, that means everything. So if you really want to stand alongside some kind of God belief that comes from the Bible or wherever you get it, then give God a little credit for understanding that what we're facing is something that humans and other races and beings all over the multiverse, multiple galaxies, you name it, planets, billions of planets. Scientists say billions of Earth-like planets are out there. Okay, so give God a little credit. God is not just God of this earth, okay? When you people say God wins, you're talking about some football team idea that humans are one side of the football team and aliens are on the other, and God believes only in you and only in the earth. Okay, it's bullshit.
Favoritism.
I'm sorry, it is just insane if the logic doesn't hold. You have to realize that if God is everything and God is God, okay, the God of the everything, okay, not just some little jealous fucking, God.
Well, they'll come back to you and say,
team.
They'll come back to you and say, no, well, hold on.
So important.
Hold on. They're going to say, well, they're fallen angels. That's what I hear constantly.
Fallen from what?
Extraterrestrials are fallen angels. They're demons. A lot of people go to that direction immediately.
Yeah, I know that, but this is what I'm addressing. I'm addressing this mentality that has an us versus them
Right, right.
idea. Okay. Yes, there is what we call evil. The Eastern philosophies are more balanced in the sense that they call it light and dark, yin and yang, so on. Understanding that this is a composite, that God is just as responsible for the evil around you, allowing that to happen. It's kind of like the white hats, and it kind of cracks me up in a way. So think about it this way. So the white hats have decided to play God. How are they playing God? What they're doing is letting the dark side be dark and do its damnedest, right? Without interfering, because they think it's going to, quote unquote, destroy itself. Evil will destroy itself. Well, yeah, maybe eventually, but it hasn't in the last million trillion years. So I don't think it's happening tomorrow. But nonetheless, you know, this is what they're doing. It's a mentality that does not hold through. There's no through line of truly understanding who we are, why we're here in this situation, and what we're capable of because of God, okay? And because actually the beings out there, the other beings that are incoming to visit us here on Earth, etc., whether you want to call them AI, you want to call them AI driven, you want to call them, I don't know, fallen angel, fallen this, you know, little angel babies with wings like they painted in the Bible paintings, you know, do you understand what I'm saying? I'm saying,
I do.
start, you know, see, people think if you have tunnel vision, they can control you. And I'm sorry, but this is also the white hat idea. So they don't want you to think outside the box, think bigger, and start realizing that this.
But that goes back, this still goes back to what you were talking
about.
But hold on. What? This still goes, Kerry, do you know what we're dealing with here? There are still people taking the vaccine. Okay. That's what we're dealing with here.
That's right.
So we can't just jolt them with this crazy. I mean, it's got to be incremental for a lot of people. Because
you're underestimating them as usual. This is my point. My point is,
you're saying just put it out there.
Absolutely. 100%. Because, and I'm the one who believes more in God than you do, because God made me. And God has given us incredible capabilities, and all they need to do is discover them.
But that's when I go back to cognitive dissonance. That's what I'm saying. They just turn it off.
Them shit like mushrooms. They're never going to get a higher consciousness. In other words, as long as you play that game of limitation, you are not going to awaken anyone. Okay. You don't realize how these things all work together.
I understand.
Higher consciousness.
I'm with you on this. I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm just saying, how can you wake someone up when they're going to be in cognitive dissonance and in denial? They're just going to turn you off. Okay. They're vibrating at a conscious level way the fuck down here. They're not going to all of a sudden just go, oh, see, now I'm awake now. That makes it doesn't work that way.
Okay.
They'll just turn you off.
If you treat people, this is what the Illuminati have done for centuries. They have actually had a very low opinion of humanity, and consequently have basically told them what to do and how to do it. And it kept them in the dark, like, and fed them shit like mushrooms, which is what, you know, it's a military joke. Do you understand? You get what you put out there. And in the end of the day, these humans, if you really believe they came from God, you would treat them extremely differently. You understand me? Okay, because there's God in each of us, and each of us can be reached through the same pathway, okay, through consciousness. Earth and humans are going through a huge awakening that's much bigger than awakening to the realization that Trump should be in office.
Yeah. Oh,
it's bigger than that, okay? It's important to realize that if you bring these other things in, what you do start to do is really change their consciousness, change it in every way, change that, you know, we're revealing how children are being treated. We're revealing how humans are treating other humans. We're revealing all these truths. And if you bring them in, it changes your reality, and you start to see life and other humans differently. That means you start doing things differently, because when you see differently, you act differently. If you are treated like some little mouse in a box or a goldfish in a goldfish bowl. You understand? That thinks that's the whole world. Then you're going to continue. If you keep reinforcing that negative view of reality, then people around you are going to reflect that.
I agree with you 100% on that.
People are looking, why are they so hungry right
so
now?
you're all about consciousness expansion, and people should all take part of this. I always say that, I at one point 13 years ago, I was interested in becoming a Mason, right? And I visited the lodges. I didn't know, back then I was barely waking up to things. Now I looked at that and I'm like, oh my God. But something came over me, and I believe it was from God. And it's like any society that's holding secrets from humanity is in its nature evil. And
well,
I felt that
John F. Kennedy said that publicly.
correct. Yeah. So I felt that I heard that voice and
actually told the truth.
Yeah, and I left, and I never
or at
went
least
back.
that president. Yes.
Yeah,
so Q and
that.
the White Hats are based on that premise. They're based on the whole life of John F. Kennedy. I wish people would just wrap your minds around this. This is true. Okay. I know White Hats. I know them personally. They're absolutely obsessed with following in the footsteps of this great man, John F. Kennedy. All right. And his son, who should be reflecting exactly what his father has. And he has, but he's had to do it in a very clandestine way to stay alive and protect his family and God knows what. But if you live lies constantly, eventually it's going to come back and bite you. It's all going to fall apart. Okay. So all I'm saying here is to give truth a chance, if you will. Give this idea that humans can handle a lot more than you give them credit for. That children being born right now, who cares whether they know how to grow a plant? I've got these people who criticize younger people right now saying they can't do anything for themselves. They want to just order it, bring it in, and that's it. That's not the judgment of the soul. You understand what I'm saying? There's a soul that came in.
You're basically saying humanity is ready for the truth. Bring it on.
Why are they so hungry for information? Don't you know what that reflects?
Yeah.
It reflects that their consciousness is hungry to learn and to know more and to understand more. And if all you do is give them this little limited view of reality, and I'm talking the alternative, I'm talking the White Hats, I'm talking the dark side. If all those three groups out there are limiting people's view of reality, it's not going to help humanity in the long run. It basically brings you darker, 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 limit, when in fact you could bring it lighter, 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 and if you go beyond an earthly consciousness and you start realizing, what do you think God does every day? I mean, if you want to personify this kind of thing, the bottom line is he thinks about everything. He doesn't just think about Earth. Okay. He didn't just make the whole cosmos just to focus on Earth. Get your mind out of the gutter. Start realizing, start reading books that are much more enlightened. Just look into Eastern philosophy, for God's sake. Start understanding why these things are the way they are. Why does something negative happen to you? And then, because it's a limitation brought into this reality, making you face it face to face so that you can break through it or heal yourself of it. Understand? So this is, I don't know why people are so married to these very negative views of reality when they're at the same breath, they'll tell you God wins. Yeah. Well, don't you win if God wins? Don't we all win if God wins? Well, of course God wins. He won already. He's not waiting to win. Okay, you're seeing things in a time zone. You're seeing things in a
small scope and a time constraint.
And I'm just saying, look, us in the alternative media, it behooves us to widen the playing field, to bring in these aspects that aren't talked about. Okay. And yes, Sound of Freedom is carefully bringing in one aspect. But when I tell you that this pedophilia is institutionalized by the deep state and has been that way now for thousands of years, okay, that they put it into an institution so that they could get away with it right under your noses.
Like
all right?
CPS.
Like Big Pharma.
Yeah.
Like all of
the
this.
Planned Parenthood. It's all connected.
It's all connected.
Yeah.
It is. And look, people, if you treat somebody like they have a small mind, that's what they're going to reflect, especially if they're trying to learn from you.
But don't you think, Kerry, that this is at least the right step in the right direction? I mean, at least we're shining a light on it, right?
Yeah, it's a step, but
people will watch this and then research into people like you, or watch this channel and be like, oh, that makes more.
So. I hope so.
We're hoping that's what happens.
Yeah, but I'm just trying. Okay, look, I'm talking to you on the one hand, we're talking to each other.
Right.
But I'm really trying to talk to the larger whole, whoever will happen upon this video, because what I'm seeing out there is this sort of ever diminishing small version of reality that never brings in, even though they talk about it religiously, they don't really understand what they're saying. If you really truly believe that you come from God and that God is in you and you are in communication with God, then who cares if they're going to try to do all these things? These things will actually be mitigated because there are enough people that will take matters into their own hands, that will defend themselves. If they need to be exposed to radiation or whatever the hell it is, well, then that's what's going to happen. But when you belabor this small-minded version of reality day in and day out, instead of also giving some time to the larger whole, to what we're part of, and that involves other beings, other consciousnesses, and that means from the lowliest, ant running around the planet to the highest, high, whatever you want to call these people, that in hierarchies, people like to get into all that, religious people. So what I'm saying here is it's all consciousness, all of it.
Levels of it
around us is consciousness, and we don't need limitations. Okay, we don't even need all of these people who are trying to rule over us. Why every second do people want to give away their power to someone, to some organization, under any circumstances? And then they complain when that organization takes care of, takes over their life. Why give your power away to these people when they don't know any better than you do? If anything, they know less. In most cases, they know less. So, I'm just saying that, this is a day after 4th of July. I think it's a good time. It's like an opening to begin to see all of reality differently. And there's nothing wrong with exposing the lies, okay? And I don't care who's saying it, okay? And I do know people like Trump and JFK Jr. know a hell of a lot, all right? They know at least as much. I give them some credit for knowing what I know. And if you know what I know, there's a ton being left out of the discussion. I mean, a ton. And you don't have to run around saying God wins, because God doesn't have to win. Winning is a very limited, stupid concept. And if you want to talk eternity, well, then winning is not the point. It's, you are going to win. How about you win? How about humanity wins? Let's start with that. Okay. And if humanity is going to win, that means all of humanity. That means when we make laws and rules and regulations, like what do the Republicans want to do? They want to bring it down locally. Well, I see some of the most corrupt local politics is more corrupt even than the larger whole. Why? Because when you narrow something down and you have fewer people involved, you have fewer consciousnesses involved. And when you have fewer consciousnesses, again, what are you doing? You're actually moving away from a God consciousness, which includes everything, to a very limited view of reality, limited to those number of few people in a tight little community that can basically rule over you and decide your life. whether it be, you know, whether your child that you're pregnant with lives or dies, whether you live or die, whether they throw you in jail or not. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
In other words, this diminishing whole, this idea of breaking everything down and using limits. And now all they want is paper ballots. They think if they break it down and limit it,
I know,
paper ballots, that like bling, we're suddenly going to have an honest election.
No. Nope.
And there's this Trump time capsule where whether or not I know this guy, it sounds like a fake name. So I think perhaps it's not really a real person, but called Jetson White. Have you seen this thing where supposedly a few years ago, back in 2021 or something, that he says the White Hats were involved. Juan O'Savin's, speeches were rolled into this idea that that this planet is not going to make it. The humans have to leave this planet and go to another planet because we have to get rid of all this bad stuff, infiltration that's happened with humanity and pedophilia, and they're eating their own, preying on each other. You're going to take the same group of people who are doing that to each other and move them to another planet. Do you seriously think you're going to remove those inclinations out of their DNA by doing that?
Right.
It's like moving into another house. Your house was infested because you are infested.
Correct.
Right? So
wherever you go, there you are. You take yourself with
let's
you.
Be a little intelligent about this. All right. This problem that we have between light and dark and what's really going on. What do you do to darkness? You expose it to the light. That's the first step. And the very first step in every case. You lie, you continue the darkness. You expose it, you bring light. What is light? God's light. You bring God's light to expose the darkness. Okay. And that is the first step. So I don't know. I hope I'm not being.
Oh, that was great, Kerry. It was awesome.
I'm just tired of people looking at, some impending horrible thing in the future and saying doom, 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 when in reality,
and limiting it to God wins. It's like it's a football game.
We are part of God. Therefore, we are unlimited.
Right.
Let's embrace that.
And there's levels of consciousness, and it's up to us to expand our consciousness.
If you don't do it, Nino, if I don't do it, then how can we expect all the children out there to do it? Because they're going to be told there's a limitation around their brain and a limitation on what they can do with their life.
And that is how they control us. That's how they hurt us. That's how they give us the hive mentality. Kerry, thank you for joining me. This was amazing as always. I guess I'm going to name this "Give Truth a Chance." Is that good with you?
That's fine with me.
All right, cool. Everybody, Kerry Cassidy. Kerry, where do people find you?
ProjectCamelotPortal.com is my website. I have thousands of interviews there, thousands, literally. And you can use, there's a little search. It's a magnifying glass at the corner. And you can basically put in any name, any topic, and find videos.
ProjectCamelotPortal.com?
Portal.com.
Okay. ProjectCamelotPortal.com.
ProjectCamelot.com. We do not own that. We never were able to get that. They took control of it right away. So the only thing we have is ProjectCamelotPortal.com. There's also ProjectCamelot.tv and ProjectCamelot.org because we are banned in some countries. So we have 3 URLs that get you to the same place.
Cool.
And I want to give a plug because actually this afternoon I'm going to be talking to one of the founders of Nanosoma. And Nanosoma can actually reverse any kind of negative stuff happening to your body. All right. Because it helps your body repair itself. So I would encourage you to listen to my interview with the founder, Richard Presser, but he's also been interviewed by me 2 or 3 other times. And I have Nanosoma on my website and highly recommend it for people that are undergoing any kind of, vax stuff and, all the negative stuff out there.
Kerry, thank you so much.
Thank you.
God bless.